and welcome to the CLL&H Model Railroad in Palisade, Colorado. I purchased this BL2 locomotive, Proto 2000 series, it's a Lifelike, on eBay for 30 bucks. And I think that was including shipping. Got a pretty sweet deal on it. It had been ran a little bit, showed some wheel wear, but I think he sold it because it ran pretty rough. It is a DC model. I tested it on my DC track, and I would probably tend to agree with the previous owner. Runs pretty rough, and I think it's just because of the way they were designed and the way they were. This one had an open can motor. These sometimes you'll get one that runs pretty good and it's pretty smooth. I've got a couple other locomotives that I've used this motor with and didn't do the upgrade or the modification to it, and they run pretty good. This particular one needed a new motor, I think. So I upgraded to the Genesis motor, the Athearn Genesis. Flywheels are different, the way they mount them and to the trucks, and so we're going to go over that. We're going to kind of try to explain how I designed my drive shafts and some of the things in the modeling I did with the body. So with that, I'll get things ready and I'll be right back. Okay, so we're back. This is the chassis. Had to do some modifying on the chassis to accommodate the new motor, and the main area was this little pocket right here. Okay, I used a tool that you can buy from the hobby shops or hardware stores. It is just a grinding tool. A lot of machine shops use them and so forth. I just use them on the end of a drill, and I hogged it out until the motor wasn't touching. So the motor goes in just like this, and then it bolts down to the chassis, and I think we're going to be set pretty good. Another thing I noticed with this particular locomotive, it had a terrible turning radius. And at one of the areas on my layout, which is about a 24-inch, it was bound up pretty tight. It was right up against the pockets the trucks were, and that's where it was stopping. So the original area in these trucks, they have significant smaller pockets than what I've got here. So I hogged them out pretty good on both ends and then repainted it. So this would probably work pretty well on about an 18-inch radius, whereas otherwise the stock model wouldn't do it. It'd derail and fall off the track. So I'm going to go ahead and mount up the motor, and we can get started with that. And I'll be right back. Okay, we're back, and I got the motor mounted into the chassis. Wanted to let you guys all know what we put in here and the model number on this. I got this off of eBay for I think 35 bucks, including shipping, or $38, something like that. It was fairly reasonable. It did come with a DCC card, so you could plug in an 8-pin decoder. I'm disregarding that, and I'm using the Soundtrax TSU 2200, and this is something I made up here for this locomotive. Also using the new current keeper that they've got from Soundtrax. So I will go over that in a little more detail later. So this is where we're at now with the locomotive. As you can see, it mounts up perfectly right in the holes there, and once you've got the chassis modified for the motor, fits in there fairly nice. It's going to be a good fit. So next I'm going to show you what I've done to the trucks. Had to do some pretty extensive modification to the trucks. I wanted to completely isolate these trucks from the chassis because they do ride right here on this unit on the chassis, which is right here. So you have a contact right there, and if you use your ohm meter, if you have any of these and you're going to modify them, you'll use an ohm meter, and you'll notice that that actually conducts electricity to one of the sides of the truck. And on DC, it uses the chassis for part of one side of power. So you need to isolate that. So what I did is I took a small die grinder on my Dremel tool and I cut that off. Then I trimmed it down a little bit so it wouldn't touch either side, and I epoxied it back onto the truck. So it should be very easy to pop back off if you need to get in there to change gears or whatever. But I've done this before, and I've never had an issue with it not being able to get in there and repair it. And then you just re-epoxy the piece of metal back on. So then I soldered to each side of the truck contacts. So now I've got it completely isolated from the chassis. I did this with both trucks. Here's the other truck. And I'll go ahead and mount those up and get them snapped in, and then we've got to do some measuring for the drive shafts. And these are going to be the drive shafts, the original Athearn Genesis drive shaft with the hexagon end. So they go into the drive shaft, or the drive shaft goes into the cam just like this, see? So we'll have to cut those to match the end of the drive shaft originally made in the trucks. So I'll show you what I'm talking about once I get going with this. So I'll be right back. Okay, we're back, and I got the truck mounted where it's supposed to be, and I put on the small drive shaft, the original, that goes on the gear. Okay, so what I need to do now is figure out the length I'm going to need to cut that drive shaft. So as you see, I went ahead and put the drive shaft inside the motor here, and I put it and bottomed it out all the way to the end. So that shows how much length I've got to drill for that drive shaft. So what I'll probably do is I will probably cut this drive shaft about right here. I will drill this previous drive shaft to accommodate this, and then a little CV glue once that's pushed down inside that original drive shaft. So I'll show you what that looks like once I get it done, and I'll be right back. All right, so we're back. The trucks have been mounted onto the chassis, front and back, and the drive lines are all in place. They seem to fit really well. Next is to apply some power. Let's see if we've got any binding or how everything's operating. Okay, looks pretty good. Motor's nice and smooth. All right, so that finishes up the mechanical side of it. Part number 2 in this video will be our Soundtrax TSU 2200 sound decoder. I've put it in the wiring and the lighting in my body of the BL2, and we just got to get it all final plugged in and operational, and that will be in part 2 of the next video. I'll see you there. Thank you.